get started with the meeting then. The agenda itself looks very similar to what it did 2 weeks ago. The information is slightly updated today, and there was a new option that's been added into the MARC import process that I wanted to go over. I also received a question from Chicago Theological Seminary, and I've been trying to work my way through that, and I wanted to check with others to see if you were running into the same kind of a situation. So let's go ahead and get started. The news from LibLime about version 20, or version 5.20, is that there is, as Patrick called it, a whole bunch of bug fixes that need to be done. And they are in the process of working their way through those. He also let me know that the 4 enhancements that we ordered have been pretty much completed according to what he said. And when I say that they're completed, it means that the programming has been done and it is about to be released to the support people so they can work on doing some testing. The expectation that we have is that the point release will be installed before next Monday, so that we'll be able to start looking at the different features and see how they have been implemented next week. There currently, in talking with him, there currently is no specific date for migrating to production, and I would suggest that you all need to have a little bit of time, or maybe a lot of time, to go in and go through your regular processes and make sure that nothing has been broken during the merging of the code bases together. I've been watching the support center quite closely, and there have been a few things that have gone through on specific problems, but as of yet, I have to see anything on the new version of the software. So I know that there are a couple of things that are bugs out there, and we'll address some of those as we come across them. Okay, there is, as far as I know, the release notes have not been updated. I haven't looked at them, but I haven't received a message from Jane saying that they've been updated with some new information. So I'm assuming that they have stayed the same. The rest of the documentation, I know that as Jane has time, she works on updating them. I didn't check the date this time. I figured if it's anything past May 9th, you can assume that it's the current one that you're looking at. Also, remember when you go into the documentation to make sure that you are connecting with the version 20 of the documentation. When I click on the shortcuts that I have, I end up going into version 18 first. I simply highlight the 18, make it 20, and then I go right into the documentation. So be sure you're looking at the right version of the documentation to go with the software. Okay. Now, what I just so awfully did is close my window. Okay, so let me come back here into the Waldo sandbox. And I'll explain what the intent of the enhancement that I have on the agenda is supposed to do. When I go to Tools and import a batch, the actual import at this step stays the same, but I want to start from the beginning so that you can see how this is working. I'm going to choose a file that I've actually used on the InfoMart side of things, but it's something that is called Circuits Collection. And when we get to our second page of our import, there are a couple of new things that appear. The comments about this file are still there, and again, you've been used to this, so you know you choose either bibliographic holdings or authority. In our record matching rule, there are several options that are in the Waldo sandbox. Your record matching rules may be different than what mine are. So if they are, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just be aware that if you go in and copy from the Waldo sandbox and create a new rule in your sandbox, make sure that it's set up correctly. I've been doing quite a bit of testing this morning on this particular feature and finally realized that my matching rule for ISSN was set up incorrectly. So when you are working with this, if things don't go exactly the way that you have been expecting them to be, it could be that the record matching rule isn't set up correctly. And again, to look at the record matching rules, you would need to move over into the administration area, and then it's over on the far right-hand column, about halfway down the page or halfway down the column. Okay. In this case, I'm going to tell it to do a search for ISBNs because this record contains monographic records. And the action is pretty much the same as it has been for the if a matching record is found. You can choose to replace it. You can add the incoming record, so there will be a duplicate created, or you can ignore the incoming record. I'm just going to leave it at the default that comes in. We then have action if no match is found, and this one stays the same. There's the same two options that you've been used to seeing, the add incoming records and ignore the incoming records. And then there is a new match option in this particular area, and it's called Leader 05 handling. And when they say Leader 05, they mean byte 5, which is actually position number 6. And we have some options. One option is to pass the leader as it is. In other words, don't change it. And the second option is to change the leader so that you create delete records out of the incoming records. And the last option is to convert leader 05D, if it's set to D, to C to make it into an update batch. So there is a little bit more opportunity to manipulate the records as they are coming in. I've been able to verify that this part of it, when I run the records through this program, actually do have the leader position changed as expected. And then it leads to this final action if the leader 05 is D. And options that we have here are attempt to delete, ignore failures, attempt to delete, overlay on failure, and always overlay or always ignore. I've been testing the various options, and I haven't quite been able to get it to do exactly as I wanted so far. So the next one that I have to test is the always overlay. Okay, so running a set of records through this process, especially with handling the leader by 5 handling, can give you a little bit greater opportunity. The intent of this, as I recall, is that if you receive a file of delete records from a vendor such as ProQuest or EBSCO or whatever for ebooks or even journals, anything that you've received from them, that you can run that file through this program and it will actually delete the records as it goes in. So far, I'm still kind of struggling to try and figure out what the right process is for this, but I'm getting closer. It's something that I just became aware of, I think, towards the end of last week, and it's something that is not documented yet, which is always makes it fun for trying to test the first time through. The rest of the form is the same as it's always been. So I'm going to make one change here. I'm going to make one change to make every mark leader byte 5 to a D. And once it's there, I'm going to choose the option to always overlay so that every record in this file that I enter into the system will end up becoming a delete, a record that is marked as a delete record. And the program then should handle that as a delete record. So let me go ahead and do a stage for import. Okay, so there were no matches found, which doesn't surprise me because I think I didn't load this one into this database. But I'm going to take us to the Manage Mark Records anyway, so that you can see that I've got my items that are identified here. When I click on the record, it will open the record that exists in the file, in other words, whatever is in the reservoir. So when I look at this record, I can see that byte number 6 or byte number 5, position 6, is in fact a D, and in my original file it was a C. So this file is now set up as a delete file. If I actually had this file already in the system, I could now go in and delete it, but let me do this process again, but I'm going to first load a file and then I will go ahead and use these options to delete it. Okay, I'm just going to load the record at this point, so it should go in as a standard record load. And just so we can look at this for to make sure that it is doing what we expect it to do, I'll open that first record and you'll see that in the leader that this particular record is coded as N, which is a new record. So this is a brand new record. Now the assumption is made that the record has been in your database for a while, and when you get a record from a vendor that says that it's to be deleted, you should be able to find a match for the records in the file that comes from your vendor. Okay, let me go back one. And sorry about the pause here. What I'm finding is that I have to move my windows around again a little bit, just to show that the record is in the system now. I'm just going to click on my record number, and you can see that the record is there. Everything that I expected came through on this particular record. I didn't have item information entered in the MARC file, so there are no items that have been created automatically. Okay, so to show you the way that the delete is supposed to work, let's go back to our tools, choose our MARC import, and I'm going to select the same file because I want to make sure I find matching records. And I will okay. I read my click too quickly. Okay. I'm not sure what happened there. So I'll just select this one again. And I'm now removing my hand from my mouse, so I can't do anything until it uploads a file. Okay. And now we'll come down to the questions that we have here. I'm going to tell it this time to look for matching records. And I'm going to ask it to look for ISBNs since these are monograph records. The action, if a matching record is found, we have a couple of choices. What we are going to do is replace the record in the database with the incoming record. And that the action, if no match is found, we're not going to add the record, we're going to tell it to ignore the record. And for the leader 05, we're going to make it a D. And in this case, the action, if the leader 05 is D, I'm going to always overlay. I'm still trying to determine what the best option is in this particular field. I think that this is the right one to use, but we'll find out in a little bit. I don't know what's going on with my system. It's like everything is just slowed down here. Okay, so this should work. This is interesting. It says there are 0 records in the file. So let me I'm going to select a different one. Okay, and for this go through, I'm just going to load the records. There should be, I think, 25, 50, okay. Anyway, while I'm waiting for that to load, Jason, your question about will this allow for batch deleting, that is the intent of it. In testing, I'm not sure it's doing exactly what we wanted it to do. So once I can figure out if this is in fact ready to go, I'll let everyone know. Yes, I remember that we ran into this problem. The reason that I'm going through this is that I'm assuming that what I'm assuming is that if you have a file of records that are to be deleted, this process would allow that to happen. Since I don't have the same database that you do, I think that what we will need to do is to take one of the delete files that you've been getting from ProQuest and in the sandbox, run one of those files against the database in order to see if it does work work the way that we want it to. Basically, in other words, it will ignore pretty much most of the data, and if it matches an ISBN or some other specific field that we can choose, we might be able to get rid of the records without a lot of hassle. Right now, I'm having lots of hassle trying to test it because I'm trying to make, oops, sorry. Okay, so the records have actually been loaded into the system. So I'm going to start again, and I did. And what I just did by loading the records, okay, and now I get to my questions. I'm going to tell it to look for matching records. I'm going to tell it to replace the existing record with the incoming record. If there is no match, I'm going to ignore the record. And if there is a leader 05, I'm going to set every mark leader to a D. And if the leader 05 is a D, I'm going to tell it to this is the one that I think I'm supposed to choose, even though I chose the overlay on the others. But once the delete byte gets set in the bib record, it should process that record as a delete and take any record that matches it out of the database. So we'll see how this one works. Okay, so it read 50 records. There are 50 that matches at least one rule, which is the ISBN. So let's go to this file. Before I do the import, I want to show you that in the file, in the leader field, byte 6 is now a D. Let me just, as you can see right there. So it's a D for all of the records that are in the file. So at least that part, I think, is working correctly. It's at least making it a D. My assumption at this point is that when we import into the catalog, it should actually, in fact, delete all of these records. So let's try again. Okay, and I get the record, or I get the message back that it's completed the import, but my counts that I see here doesn't tell me that there were records deleted. And in the information that is displayed in the grid, I don't see that there has been any deletions that have taken place. In other words, the status still says stage. I would expect it to say deleted, and it says auto match. So I'm not certain that this is doing what I want it to do. So let me look for one of these records. I'll look for tensor voting. And the record is still there. What I have been doing in my testing has been then going into the record in edit mode. And looking at the leader field, and it shows that byte 5 is still set at an N. So something isn't working correctly in this process. And since it's not documented, and since I don't have a description of how the code actually was enhanced, I'm going to have to do some reporting in the report or in the support center and try and figure out how this is supposed to work. My thought is that when we ordered this, when we go into our tools menu, and once we get to our manage import stage, that when we get our record up and we have a D in the record that sits in the file that we're working on processing, is that when it goes into, when we import it into the catalog, that the record would be deleted. And that in the counts that come back, we would have an indication that many records have been actually deleted. But since I'm not seeing what I expected to see, I have to get in touch with them. I wanted you to know that this was here. It's not something that is in the release notes. It's not something that is in the documentation. And as you can see, it isn't working the way as I expected it to. The intent of this is so that when you do get a load of records from the vendors, that you would be able to process that file through the regular MARC upload process. Other ways that I have tried to look at this and have tested this is by trying to imagine what might else happen on this. And one of the things I thought is that if it changed the existing record to a D in byte 6, byte 5, that I would be able to search for any deleted or any delete records in the system. Oops. And what I was thinking is that perhaps what we would have to do is then add these to the cart and then delete from the cart. But that doesn't make any sense to me. That is something that I don't think we should have to do. So I'm going to have to figure that out. But we are trying to find a way so that you would be able to delete certain, or either a file, or if you can extract the records from your database and then run them through this process, you wouldn't have to do item by item. So I'm going to keep trying to work my way through this and figure out the right questions to ask, and I probably will have to have a couple of go-rounds at that. But that is the intent of this. And we are trying to get it so that whenever you get a file to delete, you can delete it. Or when you get a list from your vendor, because I know some of them will send you an Excel file instead of a MARC file. So if we can get this to work the way it's supposed to, we should be able to get that into a process where you can create an input file from an Excel spreadsheet and have it set up to delete the bib records in your existing database. That is something that we've been trying to get to work for a while. So hopefully we'll be able to get this to work. Okay. Let me go back over here to the agenda. And I know that was less than an impressive demonstration, but I just wanted you to see that that feature has been added, even though I don't know how it's been added, and what I'm doing to work with that. I haven't, since there was no update to the release notes, I haven't updated the Code Fusion Support Center list. And again, just to review the 4 features that we did ask, we did order from the system are these 3 plus the one underneath it. And my understanding is that these have all been completed. Now, I'll have to make sure I have some MARC records that have a 506 field in them so that I can make sure that we're seeing those fields when they're in a bib record in the public display. But once those features are in the Waldo sandbox, I believe they will also be in your sandbox. So once I know that these have been added, I will let you all know so that you can help test them. The one in this group that I'm most excited about is the one where if a barcode is scanned and it's not already checked out to a patron, that it would be counted as a browse count instead of you having to find out that it's not checked out and then send it through checking it out to your statistics only patron. That will help, I think. Okay, and as I said before, that I've been putting the recordings on YouTube as soon as the meeting is done. And I do have one other thing to bring up that was that I didn't get onto the agenda. But I'm going to go over, Yasmin, over into your database. And I did a search, and I actually I do see let me. Okay, it's okay under each of the headings here for each of the individual facets. It looks like there's nothing there, and I'm not sure how that's coming through on your monitor, but I'm seeing what looks like ghosts of things that are here. And like under availability, when I scroll over it, I see anywhere online and learning commons. And under format, I see book. So I'm wondering if there's maybe something with the color settings in your CSS. Yeah, and yeah, I know that's something that you can do in CSS. And let me show you another site here. Okay, this is the InfoMart, but I wanted you to see how this is set up in the CSS for this, and I can look in this and see what is what the names are of the different areas of the form. But on this one, a light blue background was chosen for the facets column, and then a darker blue for the headers. And then the letters, I believe, are a dark blue that matches the blue in the header. So it could just be that what you're seeing in your facets is that the colors that are being used just are not working quite right together. Yasmin, let me know if you want me to find the names of those areas of the form, because that's something that I can at least speed that much up for you. Okay, I will do that. Ben, you said that there were some issues that you hadn't reported yet. Would you like to describe them?
Hi. Yeah. Let me see if I can. Find them. There's one thing actually. If you can go back to the sandbox that we were just looking at on the public side, that's one. And scroll down to where the date range box is. Now there are some other problems with this that I think we all know about, where you can't change the previous date, even though you can change the URL. That's one of the things that I think if you haven't reported it, then I'll definitely look into it. Where are my notes?
Yeah, as you could see, when I changed this to 1800, and it doesn't stay there.
Right. Yeah, right. And you can put the, I found all kinds of weird stuff playing around with it, but the bottom line is that just needs to change. One of the other things we found about that, those two boxes, is that the boxes don't look like you can actually type in them, or at least not in the versions that we're in. And anything that they can do to make that look more like a box that you can type in would be great. Like even changing, the word to something else so that it doesn't look like it's part of the whole, boxes. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, it's not quite as bad here.
Yeah, this is an issue that has been reported by the public libraries. Yeah. They don't like the slider at all.
No.
and I
yeah.
Visually something different to look at. So
yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. I like the idea of having a slider. I think it's it at least looks cool. I think at least a year ago we submitted here are some ideas that you might want to play with as far as facets are concerned, and the slider bar was one of the things that we threw in. And the example that we use actually came from I think an EBSCO database. So we can always dig that back up again and say, hey, this is good. Let's go a little further towards this though. There was one other. Up at the top. There's the way of sorting results. Oh, there it is. Sort by relevance. That should look more like a drop-down box.
Yeah,
I mean, as soon as you click on it, it looks like a drop-down box. It should look like a drop-down box all the time.
Yeah, I agree. Well, because depending on how you have, and now I can't get rid of the drop-down box.
Right.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother me that it looks like a drop-down box.
That's really interesting that once you click in it, it's always a drop-down box, but if I did a new search, it would go back to looking like it was just a, by the way, this is sorted by relevance.
Right.
That needs to change.
Yeah.
And again, that is something that I know that South Central has reported.
Oh, good. Yeah, you mentioned. I think on the agenda, you mentioned that the Code Fusion Support Center list is in an Excel file.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd love to see that because I'm going to start tripping over all these things, reporting them.
I thought I sent that out last time.
Did you?
I'll send it out again. I'll send it out after the meeting is done, so that you definitely have a copy of it.
Yeah.
Gosh, I created that so that I could let you all know what the problems were. So anyway, I'll make sure that you get a copy of it. I'll check first to see if there are new things to be added in. In terms of Code Fusion, Patrick says that they are close to getting to the last piece that they need to add in. I'm not exactly sure what that last piece is, but I do know that there are quite a few holds issues that the public libraries would like to see modified. I did also, well, from the Code Fusion meetings, we know that there are some features that South Central in particular wants to see added in. There are a couple of things that I noted with Patrick that I didn't agree with what the public libraries had in there, and just wanted to cue him in case I started trying to do something in order to fulfill South Central, but would then cause us other kinds of difficulties. And one of them was with the facets. So that will be interesting to see how that's resolved.
Yeah, the facets are one of the things that we've never tried to tackle here at Hartford. You know, we've played around with just about all the rest of the display, but we've never really tried to do anything with the facets yet. Not in earnest, anyways. Jim did a couple of proof of concepts for listing facets. But there are a bunch of things that we could probably take a look at as far as facets are concerned. Not the least of which is when you select one of the facets, everything else changes, and it's supposed to, but the other options that you had previously on those facets have now gone away, right? So if I get a bunch of books on Revolutionary War, one of the facets says Boston, Massachusetts. Another one says Providence, Rhode Island. If I click on the one that says Boston, Massachusetts, Providence, Rhode Island one goes away. So I can't actually switch back to that other facet. So it's like they're not permanent. That might be a bad example because it's more along the lines of subjects. But some things like format is going to be consistent throughout. You know, show me a book, show me a recording, show me visual, whatever.
Yes, I did bring up with Patrick when I was talking about the facets piece with him, I said that it would be nice if we could set them up the way we wanted. And he said, well, we can pretty much do that. We just need to first identify the indexes that could be used for this. I know that that's possible to do because in the InfoMart, there are a whole bunch of facets that were created from item fields, from fields in the item record. And the names of these are different than what they are within the 952 field, but collection is one that is definitely one that is there. So you can see you can have an awful lot of different facets.
Yeah.
But the key is trying to figure out, I'm trying to figure out what the indexes are. And I have looked at the indexing options, and I think that there's a whole lot more that we could do with the facets based on what's in the indexes and creating indexes that are needed in order to make the facets work the way you want them.
Yeah, this is something that we've been running into here as well, is that there are tons of possibilities and configurations that you can do with the DL that have never been written up. And I think Patrick actually mentioned it himself. There are dozens of APIs that are in here, but only one of them has been detailed.
Right.
So we keep, the first thing that we do is, I wonder if we can do this, and then Jim spends the next 3 hours saying, I wonder if this information is already being pushed out as an API so that we can harvest the data. But it would be great even if we just had a list of, hey, here are all the different APIs and the information that each one of these APIs is pushing forward.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with you on that, because if you go in and look at the page source on any of this, just come to this one, and if you scroll down, you can just see all of the different places that this goes. Like, here's an API. I don't know what that one stands for, but
right.
There's a lot that's in here. And then when it goes to all of to Ajax or to CDN Cloud, that's where the documentation is stored. So somehow the documentation link is in here as well. But that's just, it's kind of mind-boggling to look at that. It doesn't look like the HTML file I ever looked at all.
And those are just the ones that you can see through the document. There's a bunch more that aren't readily apparent. Some of which Jim has literally stumbled across just by playing with the text in the browser address. Just saying, okay, I know that this one is here. If I change this word to be items, do I get information? And sure enough, we do. The other thing is I think I kind of stepped in it as far as the support center and, I forgot her name.
Jane.
Jane, yes, thank you, Jane. Because I mentioned, again, that there's still a problem with putting special characters into the search bar. And she said, yep, you already have 3 tickets open on that. And I'm like, yeah, but you're the things that we've done, and it wouldn't be too difficult to actually set that up. So,
yeah, it's interesting.
yeah.
I think that probably if you look at those other 3 tickets, they'd probably all say they're closed.
Oh yeah, they do. Well, that's the thing, that's what happened with this latest ticket too. Is just said, I submitted all the information. Here's what we did in order to fix this. The regex fix that we have, and
right.
Jane just said, all right, I'll submit this to development. I'm like, okay, great. Well, I'll check it again next release.
Mm-hmm. There are times when I would like to see their pivotal database, and then there are other times when I'm thinking, no, maybe I don't.
just for the comments about us.
Well, not necessarily that, but I would want to rearrange everything and say, no, we're going to put this one at this particular story at the top of the development queue instead of down here in the Netherlands somewhere.
Yeah. I remember the comment on the level of effort submission for one of the enhancements, where they basically said, "No, this is a stupid idea."
Yeah. Yeah, I left that in there because I just thought it was, they can say that about us.
Yeah, really. It's all right. I feel like I'm ticking them off. I don't mean to, but we feel as though we have valid points. So I'm hoping that we don't end up sort of butting heads with the enhancement requests that the public libraries have been putting through, the same way that we sort of did with the enhancement work that was done for the government libraries.
Exactly. I think that there is a good chance that we'll be able to work through that so that we'll be able to come to agreement on things. I think there will be a lot more options instead of everyone having to choose a global preference, it's this or that. There may be additional preferences that turn features on and off, and that would make it a whole lot better for everyone, I think.
Right. By the way, I found the spreadsheet that you sent through on the Code Fusion support tickets.
Okay.
You sent it through on July 12th, and it's attached to the webinar meeting topics and login information email that you sent.
Okay. Is it possible to make the search bar wider? Yes, definitely. Well, maybe I know that different, like in this one for the layout, there are pre-filters that are identified, and then the search box, and that search box looks about the same as yours. There should be a way to do that, and that would be in the CSS again, just trying to identify different pixel numbers. I'll see if I can find the name for this as well so that you can play with it. Anything else, Ben?
We had a heck of a time trying to get that search box to widen, and also the buttons to format for the mobile interface, right? So when the browser scales because you're on a phone, we couldn't get the buttons in the browser box to line up. And this is when Jim said, well, why don't we just try rewriting that top bar, suppress the one that's coming through the DL, and then replace it with the one that we have. And that it actually worked. There were a couple of hinky things about trying to get the cart and the list buttons to show up, because there's a strange way that they're written in. But the reason why I mention it is not because somebody else has mentioned that they want the search box to be wider, but also because that was the first step that we took towards being able to rewrite the process behind the scenes so that space, space, and some of these other special characters wouldn't break the search anymore. We realized that if we are pushing search criteria through a new top bar, then we could change what's going through as far as search criteria is concerned.
Okay.
Geeking out, sorry.
Okay. Do you know if anyone's had a chance to look at cataloging?
No, we haven't done an awful lot of testing for cataloging yet.
Okay. I'd be interested in any feedback that you have on that, especially on the things that are listed in that spreadsheet on cataloging.
Right.
Um, I can't remember if I mentioned this last time, but I know one of the issues that South Central is pushing about it, at least, is the fact that you can't enter anything into an authorized field in the cataloging editor until you go to the authority file and then bring it back. And they are, in fact, thinking about different enhancement ideas on that. So I did let Patrick know that, that's something that the Waldo libraries are interested in as well. So whatever comes of that, I would like us to have some input. One thing that they meaning South Central, are interested in is having the capability to create brief records basically on the fly for their libraries that they allow to use cataloging. And in talking to Patrick, I suggested that maybe what they need to use is the brief records feature that you can use. And he said, well, they don't like it because I'm going, okay, the net result is the same. You create a bib record and an item record at the same time. And he wasn't sure of what was going to happen with that, but I had a couple of other suggestions for him. I said, if they are going to do something like that, why don't they just do a Z3950 import from Library of Congress or OCLC or whatever they want to set up? And he had forgotten about that. So that was an option he was going to present to them.
It's pretty cool to see some of these things that we had mentioned years ago and sort of fell by the wayside when they said, oh, we're not going to focus on that aspect, or we're doing work for the government. To see these things start to crop back up again now that South Central and the rest of the publics are working on it, especially, well, being able to edit the controlled headings fields.
Yes. Yes. There's going to be more evolution, but I'm not sure which way it's going to go. I think as they do more work with the discovery layer, that I think it makes it easier to do customization, as long as you have the right staff to do it, knowledgeable staff. Okay, is there any other issues that anybody else has found that they'd like to share? I don't have anything else today. We're at the end of the agenda. And we have our next meeting on August 9th. And since many of you have classes starting sometime in August or early September, we'll probably take a short 2-week break and then start up with more regular meetings throughout the school year, if we need them. Okay, so that's all for today. Thank you, everyone.